Hi, I just wanted to share a little video about women in the Middle Ages, what it was like for them. And if you recall, some of the things that were going on in the Middle Ages were there was the plague, there was the building of the giant cathedrals in Europe, and the Crusades and the Inquisition. We're basically talking about women in the Middle Ages in Europe. Women worked alongside men in agriculture, so there was more egalitarianism than we often think. Certainly, it wasn't a great time for women, but there was that equality when they were working in the fields together. Women were trained in domestic skills, and one thing different than today was the frequency of childbearing. And this was women were married as early as 12, and pretty much as soon as they had one baby, they'd be pregnant with the next. So women would have up to 12 kids. Half of them would die. There was this constant being involved in the process of childbearing. Women at that time were not allowed to marry without parents' consent, and noble women and nuns had access to books and to education. It was limited to the upper classes and the clergy. Obviously, women who were working in the fields and in the home and having that many children wouldn't have had much time to read books, but it was available in certain situations. Very interesting group of women. This was going on in Western Europe between the 13th and 16th century. There was a group of women called the Beguines. This is a loose affiliation of women. We see some of the more famous ones here on the right. Marguerite Porete, Agnes Blank Bikin, I'm not sure how these are pronounced, Margaret of Ypres, and so on. These were a Christian lay order. They were not nuns, but they lived apart in semi-monastic communities. They vowed never to marry, and they were free to leave at any time. So it wasn't really like a nunnery or a convent, but it was women loosely living together. There was a spiritual revival going on at the time that stressed imitation of Jesus' life through voluntary poverty, care of the poor and sick, and religious devotion. So these women were dedicating their life to these concepts: contemplative prayer and active service in the world. They were considered holy women. Several of them wrote books. Several of them were burned at the stake for their efforts because the churches never really liked people who think for themselves. But this was one way that women could get away from the uh, the cost of childbearing and not being able to educate themselves, read books, think, write books, and so on. One of the women during this time, 1194 to 1253, was Saint Claire of Assisi. You've probably heard of Saint Francis of Assisi. She was one of the first followers of him.
4 p.m.
And she was born into nobility, which she rejected. She founded the Order of the Poor Ladies. This was again part of this poverty, austerity, and seclusion from the world. And this order that she formed of nuns, after her death, that was renamed the Order of Saint Claire, and her death, or the Poor Clares. This photograph is a picture of her basilica in Assisi, which I visited. This is a picture of it at night. And if you see it in the daytime, these stripes are actually a light pink color. It's very beautiful. And this is inside the basilica. There's her crypt here. You can see they have an effigy of her in her nun outfit laying on top of her tomb. And this is me actually looking in. And I had a very strange spiritual experience happening here, which is inexplicably, I started crying and couldn't stop. It's just heaving out of me. And I'm not Christian. I'm not Catholic. I was not expecting this. I was interested in Saint Claire, but not much more than anyone else. And I had this huge experience, and people were making the sign of the cross over me. I don't know what happened. I was discussing it with a friend later, and he said, holiness is real. So I think that this holiness from St. Clair was so strong that people who are, um, what's the word, receptive to this kind of thing will be very moved. So the key takeaways of this short little foray into holy women of the Middle Ages, a little bit about what it was like for them, who were some of the key figures. A spiritual life was one of the only ways to break away from the relentless childbearing and to be able to educate it or have agency. And this is also true in other times that we might discuss, but it's certainly true here. All right, hope you enjoyed this little presentation.